Good afternoon. How we feeling? Happy Friday. Unless you're somewhere where it's already Saturday or still Thursday, but I doubt it. For us here in America, happy Friday. Being undervalued. You ever been in a situation where, you stuck around just a little bit too long? Maybe like a romantic, situation or um, situation, with a friend or family member, like how we always talk about, right? And you start to think to yourself like, wow, did these people really appreciate me? Did they really understand me? Did they really have a certain amount of love for me? And it's something as humans we all go through. I remember I worked at a job, like I've said before, the only job I've ever been fired from. And you know when you're getting paid, when you're working, when you're working with people that you actually like, for the most part, and doing stuff, you kind of, because everybody, of course, wants to be paid more than what they think they are worth, right? But just that feeling of going to work and feeling like you mean something to somebody, like you have a certain amount of value that you bring, that you have a certain amount of wisdom or experience that you bring. And what happens in a lot of situations is that you probably feel higher about yourself. And not saying that you shouldn't, because I always feel relatively high about myself, but you feel higher about yourself than other people actually feel about you, right? Because somewhere in us all, depending, of course, on your level of self esteem or your feeling of self worth, we all at certain points in our lives feel pretty good about ourselves, right? Or at times feel pretty down about ourselves. But the thing is that ultimately, especially if we continue to live, we're going to go through these ebbs and flows. But, you know, we ultimately should, even if we don't, feel good about ourselves. Hey, look, I've made it to 40. Hey, I've made it to 50. Hey, look, it may not have been the easiest ride. It may not have been the greatest ride. I could have made it an easier ride, but nonetheless, I'm still riding. And so it's crazy because every human has their own way of processing and looking at things. But so what happens when you stay around somewhere where you're undervalued? I guess for me, since I at the job I overvalued myself, so they showed me my value and said, you know what, you're fired, you're out of here, right? But when it comes down to humans and dealing with people that you interact with or you're interpersonal with on a regular day-to-day basis and everything, it's tough to kind of sometimes not really appreciate people as fully as you could or should. So I was talking to one of my uncles the other day, and I was telling him, I was like, yo, I apologize. I haven't really, been able to get over, as much as possible or whatever. And he always gives me good words. And he said, you know what, don't even worry about it. He said, because it just, when you come around, it just makes it all the better, right? And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, because, and he also says, absence of the heart makes the heart grow fonder, or whatever that saying is, right? But sometimes that's not the case. And a lot of times when you're around people, they don't really understand because, like I said, it's human nature. They don't understand and know how to, I don't even want to say like big you up because of your presence, but just appreciating your presence. And a lot of times this does happen more in romantic situations. And I know, for me, just like a lot of you out there, it's happened before, when you deal with somebody and you're just like, why? Wow. Why doesn't she appreciate me? Or, like for the women, why doesn't he, see what I am or appreciate me? And I think, as you do get older, because wisdom comes into play, you start to think about some of these things, and you say, hey, look, you know what? When I was younger, I didn't mind dealing with that kind of stuff because maybe I didn't really understand how undervalued I was. Maybe I didn't understand how rare I was because a lot of us don't. right? Because you figure you say, wow, there's 8 billion people on Earth, give or take, right? And I happen to still be one of those people, right? There's a lot of people, but in reality, I still happen to be one of those people. So you are rare, you are rare. And we've all been in situations where we've done both. We've undervalued friends, we've undervalued family, we've undervalued other people. But the reason that I know for me, I talk about a lot of this stuff is because you can still maybe in your mind undervalue people or whatever, but I'll tell you what makes them feel valued is when you show up, when you do certain things, when, if they are in a time of need, you check on them, right? Because let's face it, like especially with people that are married or live together or been living together. I mean, come on, it's just human nature. You get sick and tired of each other at some points, right? Every now and then, that's cool. Sometimes even your friends, whatever, you get sick and tired of them at certain points. But the thing is that your overall presence, when you show up, when you're the type of person that really shows these people or your friends or whomever you're with that, hey, look, when you need me, I'm here. And even sometimes when you're not looking for me, I'm still there. And the way I'm going to show you, even when you're not looking for me, that I'm there is that, hey, I'm going to check on you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Right. So, and just like any of us, even me included, I got to get better at certain things like that, checking on certain people and things like that. But a lot of times we continue to stay and deal with people who just have us undervalued, right? You know, um, you shouldn't have to be a millionaire to be valued, right? You shouldn't have to always be the person who can loan somebody money, just making up, scenarios to be valued as a person, right? So ultimately, what happens is that because as a lot of people know, my favorite rapper is Jay-Z. And one thing I always admired about Jay-Z is that when things would go on, when there was supposed beefs or whatever, he might sprinkle it into a song or something like that eventually. But at the time, you know what he did? He said nothing. He didn't say anything. He didn't get emotional. He didn't start screaming from the top at the top of his lungs. He didn't start threatening to shoot up everybody or kill everybody. What he did was he said nothing. And he just let everybody else talk and say whatever they feel. Now, in some of those situations, do I agree with him? No, right? Maybe he wasn't on the right side of history on some things. But the one thing he did do is that he's always maintained a level of civility. He's always maintained a level of calm. Where in his household, he could be going off, going crazy. But guess what? To me and you, to everybody else, he's handled the situation in a calm manner and he's let it go. And at the same time as letting it go, you know what he also did? He took himself and removed himself out of the situation. So a lot of us will be going through that or have gone through that where, like I started off with, we stick around too long when in essence we should have just removed ourselves out of the situation, right? You know how like sometimes, and I heard this somewhere because I know Pac had something called a rose that grew out of concrete. But when you think about it, if you're running around trying to, when you're trying to invest in something or a person and what do you need to grow? You need some soil and stuff to grow, right? You can't throw seeds out on concrete and they'll grow, right? They're just going to get swept away. So why stick around or deal with people who undervalue you? There's no point in doing it because if they don't undervalue you, and if they undervalue you rather, like I've talked about before, they don't have respect for you, right? Don't let anybody tell you any difference. If you in your heart really feel like a person undervalues you, they don't have the level of respect for you that you probably deserve. And it's funny about like how with people, and after years and years and years and years and years of dealing with people interpersonally, throughout jobs, school, just life in general, we know where that connection is. That's why I said sometimes when you're younger, you don't get it. Because when you're younger, you're all together. Everybody wants to be cool. Everybody has additional time. Everybody has less responsibilities when you're younger. But as you get older and the clock starts tick, 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 ticking, you don't have a lot of time left to be undervalued. You don't have a lot of time left to be under or not appreciated. You don't have a lot of time to suffer from lack of respect from people. Because, like I've said to you before, to me, and it's to most men, I know maybe women too, but definitely men, is that respect is numero uno. Most men would take respect over love, right? Because somebody could tell you they love you, and we talked about that last week, tell you they love you, which is a deep affection for you, right? But still go out and do something that would, in your estimation, shows that you don't love me, right? Those are not actions that show that you love me. But respect, what will respect do? Respect will let you know you need to hold me to this certain level, or guess what? I can't deal with you at all. You don't even have to love me, right? You don't even have to love me, but you should respect me. And if you feel like a person has undervalued you and your rare self, and they're not treating you with the level of respect that you feel like you deserve, then it's bye bye, hasta la vista, arrivederci, right? It's time for you to go on. And it doesn't matter whether it's, like I said before, friends, family members, even your children, right? I don't have adult children yet, but, listen, we need to have a certain amount of respect for each other. I still don't even curse around my parents. Now, some of y'all be like, oh man, that ain't no big deal. I don't curse around my parents. Okay? Because it's a couple reasons. First of all, they didn't curse around me like that, right? But the second thing is that I don't ever want them to feel undervalued. I don't ever want them to feel like, what they did as far as anything they've done for me in this world is undervalued. Like I'm unappreciative. Because see, like we always talk about, it goes two ways, and sometimes you're undervalued or you're not respected because you don't show the same level of respect to people in general, right? Give you another, for instance. When I see somebody and come across somebody, even wherever I used to work at, because there's always a hierarchy, right? There's always, you got housekeeping, you got janitors, you got all different types of people who may not have gone to school, may not have done this the same way there are people on higher levels than you. But you know what? I still try to treat everybody with respect and value, right? Because, when it comes down to it, any of us, and I've learned over the last 6 or 7 months, can lose a lot just like that. 1 minute you're running around, you're doing everything that you want to do, and then boom, something happens, right? And now you are at the mercy of doctors. You're at the mercy of your life that has changed, right? So you even though it's hard at times not to do, you don't undervalue people, because guess what? The first thing is that you don't undervalue yourself. And I used to say this to other people, even women I dealt with and stuff. You know what? If you feel like you could talk like that, you don't respect your dad, and you obviously don't respect yourself, because you wouldn't be talking like that to me. Because if you feel like you need to continue to do stuff like that, then guess what? You don't need to be with me. Right? You don't need to be with me. And that's the same thing that anybody else should say. If you got somebody that's, not respectful of you, and how we always talk about your time is the number one deal, then you got to say to them, hey, you know what? We've had a good ride. Because respect is a funny thing. It's like, I guess a person can work themselves up to respecting you, as opposed to if you've been nothing but a decent person, saying, you know what, this person's already earned this respect, and I'm going to do what I can not to disrespect them or not to undervalue them. But hey, it's just one guy's opinion. But let me know what you think in the comments. But until next time, live life. Don't let life live you.